I'll never forget the morning it all started. The sun had just begun to rise, turning the surface of the lake into a shimmering sheet of gold. The air was crisp, the kind that carries the faint smell of pine trees mixed with dew. Birds chirped along the shoreline, and the gentle lapping of water against the dock was a sound I had grown to love. My little aluminum fishing boat was tied up neatly, bobbing gently as though it belonged there, as though it was a part of the lake itself. It wasn't flashy, no sleek speedboat or party barge, just a humble vessel with an old outboard motor. But it was mine, and it represented something deeply personal: freedom. The freedom to fish whenever I wanted, to paddle out on still mornings, to sit and think while the world stayed busy elsewhere. Most people in the neighborhood didn't know this, but the lake itself belonged to me. When I bought the house years ago, I had acquired not just the land, but the body of water, too. It was deeded in my name, clear as day in the county records. The HOA didn't own it. They had no say over it. To me, that lake wasn't just water. It was pride, responsibility, and peace rolled into one. That morning, as I sipped my coffee on the porch, a flash of white caught my eye. My mailbox had a letter stuffed into it. No stamp, no postmark, which meant only one thing: HOA. I sighed before even opening it. Those letters were never good news. Inside, in bold letters at the top, it read, "Notice of violation, boat storage." I blinked at it in disbelief. According to them, my boat, tied peacefully to my dock on my own property, was an eyesore visible from community walking paths. The letter went on to say I had 7 days to remove it or face fines of $50 per day until I complied. At first, I laughed out loud. It was ridiculous. How could they possibly fine me for something on my lake? But the laugh quickly faded, replaced with a slow-burning anger. This wasn't about a boat. This was about control. Later that afternoon, I ran into my neighbor Jim when he was walking his golden retriever. Jim was a good guy, one of the few in the neighborhood who didn't seem thrilled about the HOA's constant meddling. He shook his head before I even said a word. "Got the letter too, huh?" I frowned. "What do you mean, two?" He nailed me last year for keeping my truck in the driveway overnight. Said it wasn't aesthetically appropriate. These people. He let the thought trail off with a sigh. I held up the paper. "They're fining me for my boat on my lake. Can you believe this?" Jim chuckled bitterly. "They think they own everything. Doesn't matter if it's yours on paper. If they can see it, they think it's theirs to control." That night I sat at my kitchen table with the letter in front of me. My wife Sarah glanced over it too. She frowned, running her fingers through her hair. "Is this even legal?" she asked. I slid over my property deed. "Nope. I've got proof right here that the lake is mine. But they don't care. They're just trying to push me around." Sarah looked worried. "What are you going to do?" I leaned back, staring out the window at the shimmering lake. My jaw tightened. "I'm not moving that boat. Not now, not ever." And deep inside, I knew this was just the beginning. Because if there's one thing about HOAs, once they decide you're the enemy, they never stop. And oh boy, they were about to make me their #1 target. The second letter came exactly a week later. Same envelope, same smug tone. Only this time, it claimed I owed $350 in unpaid fines. 7 days at $50 each. My blood boiled as I read it. That evening, I marched straight into the HOA meeting. The community center smelled faintly of old carpet and burnt coffee. Folding chairs squeaked as residents shifted, waiting for their turn to complain about lawn colors or mailbox paint. At the front sat the board, 5 people behind a long plastic table draped in a cheap cloth. At the center, like a queen bee guarding her hive, sat Linda, the HOA president. Mid-50s, hair sprayed into place, pearl necklace gleaming against her blazer. She radiated the kind of self-importance you could smell from a mile away. "Mr. Carter," she said as I approached the table, "we've already notified you about your violation. Your boat must be removed." I slammed the deed down on the table. "This lake is mine, deeded in my name. Your HOA doesn't own a drop of this water." Linda adjusted her glasses, unfazed. She gave me that infuriating fake smile. "The board has determined that visible nuisances, regardless of technical ownership, fall under our jurisdiction. Your boat is in violation." The room murmured. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Some even nodded along with her. I stared at her in disbelief. "So you admit it's mine, but you're still fining me?" "Yes," she said smoothly, "until you comply." The meeting went on like that for 15 minutes, me arguing logic, law, and property rights, them responding with blank stares and rehearsed lines. Nothing mattered. They'd already decided. By the time I walked out, the fines were still standing, $350 and growing. That night at home, Sarah looked at me across the table, her brow furrowed. "Is this even worth it? Can't you just move the boat? We don't need this fight." I clenched my jaw. If I give in now, it won't stop. Next they'll say the dock is an eyesore, or the color of our house, or the plants in our yard. This isn't about the boat. It's about principle. She sighed, but said nothing more. I could tell she didn't like it, but she understood me well enough to know when I had planted my feet. And as the fines ticked higher, day by day, I realized something. I wasn't going to win this fight by arguing. No, if I wanted to beat them, I'd have to outsmart them. And soon, the perfect idea would come to me. One that would change everything. Within 2 weeks, the fines had ballooned to over $700. By the end of the month, they were more than $1,500. Every day, another $50 piled on to the imaginary debt. It was like watching numbers on a scoreboard, except I wasn't playing their game. I buried myself in research, late nights hunched over my laptop, scrolling through property law forums, mornings spent on the phone with county offices, asking about maintenance rights and water laws. I became obsessed with understanding exactly what authority I had and what authority they didn't. That's when I met Stevens, a lawyer recommended by a friend. He looked tired, the kind of man who'd been chewed up and spit out by years of fighting HOA boards. His office smelled faintly of stale coffee and legal books. He flipped through my deed carefully. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "This lake really is yours. Entirely. No shared easements, no joint ownership, just you." I nodded. "So they can't fine me, right?" He sighed. "Legally, no. But that won't stop them from trying. They'll keep sending fines. They'll try to file a lien. It's what HOAs do. They don't back down because if they do, they lose their grip." I leaned forward. "So what do I do?" A sly grin spread across his face. "Fight fire with fire? Or, in your case, maybe water with no water?" I frowned. "What does that mean?" He pointed to a section of the deed. "Owner reserves the right to drain, fill, or otherwise alter the body of water, provided county maintenance regulations are followed." That lake is yours. If you want to drain it for maintenance, you can. And there's not a damn thing the HOA can do about it. The idea hit me like a thunderclap. Drain the lake. Take away the very thing they were trying to control. That night, lying in bed, I whispered it to Sarah. What if I just drained the lake? She shot up. "You're kidding!" "No," I said. "I can do it. Legally. If the water's gone, there's no boat to find me for." Her mouth dropped open. "That's insane. You'll start a war." "Maybe," I said quietly. "But they've already started it." And that's when the plan was born. A plan so outrageous, it just might work. When the idea first settled into my mind, draining the lake, it felt absurd. Who in their right mind would drain an entire lake just to get back at an HOA? But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. This wasn't just about revenge. This was about proving once and for all that they had no power over me, no authority over what I owned. I spent nights researching industrial pumps, studying the terrain of my property, and calculating just how much time and money it would take to do the job. The lake wasn't enormous. It wasn't some sprawling body of water that went on for miles. It was a private lake, maybe 5 or 6 acres at most, big enough to be beautiful, but small enough to be manageable with the right equipment. The day I ordered the pumps, my hands trembled with excitement. Heavy-duty, gas-powered water pumps capable of moving thousands of gallons an hour. The delivery guy raised an eyebrow when he dropped them off. "Doing some flood control?" he asked. I smirked. "Something like that." The first time I rolled the pumps down to the shoreline, a few neighbors stopped to watch. Curious faces peered from porches. Jim, of course, wandered over with his dog and shook his head in disbelief. "You're really doing it," he said. "Yep." "Draining the whole thing?" "Every last drop." He chuckled. "I almost feel bad for them." Almost. The pumps roared to life with a deep growl as I secured the hoses. Water began gushing out through thick pipes, streaming down into a drainage ditch that led to the lower creek. At first, the change was barely noticeable, but over the next few days, the water line began the retreat. And that's when the HOA noticed. On the third day, I woke up to find Linda herself standing at the shoreline, arms crossed, staring at the pumps with a look of pure horror. I walked down with my coffee in hand, savoring the moment. "Morning," I said cheerfully. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped. "Maintenance," I said casually. "Perfectly legal. Got the deed to prove it." "You can't just drain a lake." I took a slow sip of coffee. "Actually, I can. County ordinance says so. Want me to call my lawyer?" Her face turned red. She stormed off without another word. That afternoon, I got a visit from Deputy Carson. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a calm demeanor. When he walked up my driveway, I thought for sure the HOA had tried to press charges. "Mornin'," he said, tipping his hat. "Got a call about some disturbance with the lake." I showed him the deed, explained my rights, and pointed out the pumps. He scratched his chin, nodded slowly, and said, "Well, looks like you're within your rights. As long as you're not flooding anyone else's property, you're good." The look on Linda's face when Carson told her that was priceless. She stood there sputtering, completely helpless for once. Over the next week, the lake drained steadily. Fish flopped in the shallows, birds circled overhead, and the once pristine surface turned into muddy patches of exposed earth. Neighbors came by daily watching in fascination. Some were furious, those who liked to stroll by the water and brag to guests about their lake view, but others cheered me on. Jim brought over beers and said it was the best entertainment he'd had in years. By the second week, the HOA started sending out desperate letters. "Cease and desist," they wrote. "You are destroying community property value." Community property? Ha ha! That line alone made me laugh until my sides hurt. But I didn't stop, because every gallon that left that lake felt like one less ounce of control they had over me. The day the lake finally went dry was surreal. Where once there had been a mirror-like surface reflecting the sky, there was now a vast, cracked bed of mud and silt. Old branches, rocks, even a few lost fishing lures lay exposed for the first time in decades. The dock stood awkwardly over nothing, like a skeleton of its former self. I stood there on the bank, hands on my hips, and felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. For weeks, the HOA had harassed me with fines, threats, and smug letters. And now? Now they were left with nothing but an empty hole in the ground. My boat sat high and dry on the cracked earth, no longer touching water. Technically, there was nothing to find me for anymore. Linda showed up within hours, of course. She marched right up to me, her heels sinking into the mud as she pointed an accusing finger. "This is outrageous," she screamed. "You've ruined the entire neighborhood." I turned to her calmly. "No, Linda. I've reminded everyone who actually owns this place. You wanted control over my lake? Well, here it is. All dried up. Nothing for you to control." She sputtered like a broken faucet. "Property values will plummet. The board will take legal action." "Go ahead," I said, holding up the deed again. "Good luck suing someone for exercising their legal rights." Word spread fast. Some neighbors hated me for it, sure. They missed the pretty view, the way the lake shimmered in the evenings, but others secretly admired it. I could see it in their eyes, even if they didn't say it out loud. I had done what they wished they could do: stand up to the HOA and win. Over the next few weeks, the mud hardened. Grass began sprouting in patches where water once flowed. Wildlife adapted. Ducks and geese found new spots downriver. The lake transformed into a meadow of sorts, alive in a different way. But the HOA, they lost their minds. At the next community meeting, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Residents argued with each other. Some blamed me, some blamed Linda for pushing too far, and some blamed the whole system. Linda tried to rally them against me, calling me reckless, selfish, and destructive. But by then, her authority had crumbled. People saw through her act. She wasn't protecting the community, she was protecting her control. And now, she had none. Months passed. The fines stopped coming, probably because their lawyer finally told them they had no legal ground. The HOA board grew quieter, less bold. Linda resigned not long after, claiming personal reasons. Everyone knew the truth, though. She had been humiliated, stripped of her power by one man with a stubborn streak and a couple of water pumps. The dried lake bed became a new kind of gathering spot. Kids rode dirt bikes across it. Families had picnics on the grass that slowly filled in. What had once been the community lake was now Carter's Field, as some neighbors jokingly called it. One afternoon, Jim came over with a beer in hand and sat next to me on the dock, still standing, though it now overlooked grass instead of water. "You know, I think you did us all a favor. You reminded people that the HOA isn't some untouchable force. They work for us, not the other way around." I nodded, taking a sip. That was the point. It was never just about the boat. Deep down, though, I also realized something else. That lake had been a source of peace for me. I had loved it. But in the end, draining it taught me a lesson far bigger than fishing or boating or property rights. It taught me that sometimes the only way to protect your freedom is to make a sacrifice, to give up something valuable so that others can't take everything from you. I had lost the lake, sure, but I had gained something better: respect, independence, and the satisfaction of standing my ground. And in a strange way, the empty lake became a symbol, a reminder to everyone who walked by that when you push a man too far, sometimes he'll do the unthinkable. Sometimes he'll drain the whole damn lake just to prove you can't control him.